A very warm welcome everyone, my name is Nick and welcome to ZX Spectrum Talk or Spectrum Talk episode 7, where we look at everything to do with the ZX Spectrum. It might be hardware, it might be software, it might be just a bit of fun or just reminiscing with a few memories. Now I can't believe we've already got to episode 10 already. It was only meant to be a few episodes, but we got to episode 10, so here we go. Thank you to everyone that has watched this series so far and given your support, and especially those people that have retweeted on Twitter and shared it on various forums. It's all a big help and helps the channel grow and keeps it going essentially. So this time, the previous weeks we've been talking about the development of the ZX Spectrum from the early MK14s to the modern day Spectrums. Well, I say fairly modern day, they're 128K. So now we're going to have a bit of a change of pace. When it comes to the market, Sinclair Research, who designed the ZX Spectrum, originally saw it as a business computer, but really what it transpired is gaming was the main source of income. That's the thing that everybody wanted. And it's important for any computer to have its success in the marketplace to have a key character, a key gaming character. Much later on, Sega had Sonic the Hedgehog, Nintendo had Super Mario. So, you know, you need a talisman. So who did the ZX Spectrum have as their main central character? That is a character who's been in a number of games which people can immediately relate that to. ZX Spectrum, that's such and such. Well, I suppose you'd arguably say the most important character on the ZX Spectrum is Miner Willy, or Jet Set Willy by Software Projects and Bug Bite, which in those original two games, Manic Miner, Jet Set Willy and Jet Set Willy 2. There's a number of other characters as well that might be a few people's favourites, and that include characters like Wally Week, who's in Automania, 3 Weeks in Paradise, Everyone's a Wally. There's Dizzy the Egg from all the Dizzy games, let's say, and also Saberman from Ultimate's collection of games included Saberwolf, Nightlaw, Pentagram, as well as numerous others. But none of those characters I've mentioned was my particular favourite, or I liked all of them. I went for, quite early on, a character completely and utterly different. I went for a character called Horace. Now, he's my favourite character, not just of the ZX Spectrum of all time. He's an icon on the ZX Spectrum, although he did appear on a few other computers. Some of his games appeared on the Commodore 64, just a couple I believe, but you know, it really was, Spectrum was his home place. I'm unsure who originally came up with the design of Horace. He's an odd sort of humanoid sort of creature, a bit like a hunchback with two enormous eyes, very skinny arms, but I immediately loved him. Probably first saw him when I was about 9 or 10 years old. The first game he appeared in was Hungry Horace, and that was written by Cyan Software, most notably William Tang. So maybe William Tang invented Horace, who knows? I hope he owns the movie rights. And that game, Hungry Horace, was published in 1982. So right when the rubber-keyed 48K Spectrum and the 16K Spectrum was coming out, we had this Pac-Man clone. Instead of being called Pac-Man by Namco, this was Horace. And it was similar in idea. He would run round a maze collecting pills, and he'd be chased by a couple of wardens. The game was a little bit flawed in design. Stage 3 of the maze was very hard to do, but Horace had hit the scene like a mean machine. Based on the success of the first one, William Tang didn't hang around. In the same year, Sinclair Research released Horace Goes Skiing, which is an absolute classic. Now, the first game was based on Pac-Man, of course. This second game was based loosely on Frogger, where you had to guide Horace, the character, across a busy road to get his skis, then get back across the skis, avoiding all traffic and getting run over, of course, because each time you'd lose a life, had to pay for an ambulance seat. And then you'd go on a slalom on a ski slope. So there's only like 2 levels on this, and this is when the character of Horace really grew. He wasn't just this innate Pac-Man character. He was a character that could die, he could ski. He's like a modern day James Bond to me, and I was just waiting for the next game to come up. So Horace really grew. Now, while Jet Set Willy and Manic Miner was to come a little bit later, and I liked that platforming game, for me, I don't know why, Horace had the main character. He's the sort of like main character who I could invent stories in my own mind to see what other stuff he was going to get into. And that's probably reason for some of my character flaws today. Hooray! The third game in this trilogy was Horace and the Spiders. This was over 3 stages, so we was gradually building. Hungry Horace was 1 stage, Horus Goes Skiing was 2 stages, and Horace and the Spiders was 3 stages. There's a couple of preamble stages before you got to the third one, which is the best bit of the game, and it was like a panic clone where Horace must go up and down ladders on a spider's web, essentially stamp holes in the web. The spiders go and fill in that hole, and then you stamp them and kill them, and all the time the spider's trying to kill you. Each time you went round the 3 levels, there'd be more and more spiders in the web until there was 8. Now, in terms of programming, this looked absolutely special. This was Horace at his greatest. Green in colour against a black background with lots of red spiders. So much in this game to like, and it's probably my favourite of the whole trilogy. Now, the Horace games, as I say, did come out on the Commodore 64, but only the first one, Hungry Horace, which wasn't quite as good, than Horus Goes Skiing, which I still need to review that one on the Commodore 64, but that was a little bit flawed. I've been told the skiing was maybe a bit too quick to be enjoyable. A 4th game was planned, and as a kid I really would have loved that. Bear in mind the first 3 were in the early 80s. The Spectrum still had quite a bit of run to go. The 4th one was going to be Horace to the Rescue, again I think by William Tang, but for some reason it was never released, which is a bit of a disaster, and that's when the Horace story goes completely quiet. Other characters took over, i.e. Manic Miner, Wally Week and the Dizzy games, and Horace disappeared for a long time, and that was a bit of a shame really. So was Horace dead? Well, for a long time he was. The Spectrum come to its normal end of run, the 48k of course in 1992, the 128ks went on a little bit longer, but no other Horace games come out for them at all. So it was of an early 80s era, and then we have to leap forward to the homebrew era, where ZX Spectrums and retro gaming in general are coming back in, because people are looking for more simple times. In 2010, we was to see a brand new game, sort of Horace, and it was Horace in the Mystic Woods, which was a kind of Manic Miner Horace hybrid. The graphics of Horace was slightly different from the original game, so it was Horace-esque, but it wasn't actually Horace. You can tell it was trying to be him. It's over a different amount of stages, and like Manic Miner, you had to collect keys and objects and then get to the next level. It was a conversion actually by Bob Smith in 2010. They originally had come out for the Cyan-free series of laptop Palm computers, which I've never heard of until I actually reviewed the game. I haven't seen the original where it looks on that, and it was good to see. So immediately we had 4 games back, but much more was to come. Another very accomplished game was to come next, called Horus Goes to the Tower by the Mojon twins, based in Spain. That was in 2011. And now Horus Goes to the Tower and Horace in the Mystic Woods are much more graphically accomplished than those original 3 games. They give homage to that, but they go their own way. They take some of the graphics from that, but it really pushed Horace into a new area. And I've reviewed both of these games, so do check them out. Really special. In Horus Goes to the Tower, you must go up and up the screens, avoiding all the baddies, get to the top, and then essentially you would complete the game. Both of these are absolutely special. I love playing them and I was blown away by them. I didn't know they existed till someone actually told me. That's why the comment section is so powerful. Quite often when someone notes a game down in the comment section, I will write them down, and we may or may not review them in the future, but something with a Horace one, I just had to. Now there is another game called Cousin Horace, and I have seen screenshots of that. It does look very clever, but you know, it's too much of a departure for me to actually include that in the Horace series. And that's still not the end of the line for the Horace games. Hopefully when the Spectrum Next comes out, which is in July, we're currently recording this in June 2018, but the Spectrum Next is first being released in July 2018. Hopefully some more Horace games come in then, but until then there are 5 more games that already exist, all by Steve Broad. And unlike Horace in the Mystic Woods and Horus Goes to the Tower, it was very polished games. Steve's games, although they're good and colourful, they do look like they could have come out in the early 80s era, and strangely enough, that's why I'm such a fan. They look like they could come out the same house that William Tang. It looked like Steve Broad could even be sitting next to William Tang, and they released those games together. So that's why I really like these ones. So we'll go through them quite quickly. All of these games are still available on Steve Broad's website. Now, I told you before, originally was planned Horace to the Rescue, which never actually come out. Steve Broad's picked up that idea and run with it in 2013, and he released Horace to the Rescue, and he used the game Hunchback for his inspiration. Doesn't use too much of the screen, which is a little bit of complaints by reviewers around about that time, but I think it's okay. Essentially, it's stage-based, and Horace is on the battlements. The stages get progressively more difficult. You must jump over certain obstacles, avoid arrows, but then collect a bell on a single screen. Once he bashes into that without the time running out, then you go on to the next screen. So very Hunchback-esque. If you're familiar with Hunchback, either from the arcade or the ZX Spectrum, then you'll know what I'm talking about. If you're not familiar with the Hunchback games, I have reviewed the first and the second one on the Spectrum, so maybe give them a search. I'm always of a mind that the best people always respond to constructive feedback and then make adjustments going forward. Steve did exactly that with Horace to the Rescue 2. Before I said there was some complaints that the screen wasn't big enough. In Horace to the Rescue 2, he made the playfield bigger. It's the same sort of area, though Horace can jump onto various platforms this time, and he really added to the game. So I like both of these, Horace to the Rescue and Horace to the Rescue 2. Anything with more Horace in, I'm a great fan. As I say, not technically accomplished as Mystic Woods or Horace Goes to the Tower, but you know, great in their own right. The very next year, Steve brought out two other games, which are Horace Minor and Horace Minor 2. They borrow a lot of the graphics from Hungry Horace. The first game is more like platform-based, brick-based in design. The second one is very Hungry Horace in the graphics used there. In terms of a Manic Miner Horace hybrid, I think on this occasion I do prefer Horace in the Mystic Woods, because that's more aimed to that, it's more polished, so there's up against each other. These come second. It is a bit of a cut and shut of those two games, but still good to see. It's a good bit of programming. To be honest with you, Horace, when I look at Horace Minor and Horace Minor 2 by Steve Broad, I think they so easily could have been called Horace to the Rescue 3 and Horace to the Rescue 4, but it's just put Minor in. Someone looking at those games looking for a Manic Miner game might have been disappointed, so the name is a bit misleading. But again, it added to the story of Horace and his great big eyes, and you know, what's not to like? And any good series should have a Christmas special, should it not? And Steve Broad really rewarded Horace there for all the games he's been in. He brought out Merry Christmas from Horace in 2016. And this is my favourite game, I think, that Steve Broad did based on the Horace character. Essentially, you must collect parcels and presents which whiz across the top of the screen. You start off on a moving train, believe it or not. You must prevent yourself from falling down the carriage, jump from carriage to carriage, and as soon as you have got 10 presents, then you go on to the next stage. It gets gradually more difficult. It doesn't always stay on the train. Once you progress a certain level, you then have to jump on different houses. So I'm really pleased that Horace has gone beyond those initial 3 games, because it says to me that it captured the hearts and imagination of other people's, not just mine. I mean, who is your favourite ZX Spectrum character of all time? Is it Horace? Is it, are you a Jet Set Willy Manic Miner fan? Or are you any of those other ones I mentioned, Wally Week, Dizzy, or maybe some other ones, Saberman, or some ones I haven't even mentioned? So it's always good, a good bit of nostalgia there, looking at everything, the hardware and the software and the characters involved. So thank you again for watching Spectrum Talk. They tend to go out on a Saturday evening and a Monday evening as well. We got the time. 10 episodes down. Be sure to tune in for the next one. Until next time, take great care of yourself and a very fond goodbye.
Goodbye.